So as Phase 2 Season of Discovery begins to enter its final few weeks, the Classic WoW team has now given us a solid preview of what's to come for Phase 3 of Season of Discovery, which is now confirmed to be coming on the 4th of April pretty soon, alongside a brief cheeky glance at what we can come to expect when we finally do hit the level 60 cap, and some of their softer plans for the true endgame of Season of Discovery. And at first glance, a lot of these changes that are incoming for Phase 3 really do seem to be quite promising, as I've enjoyed the longevity of Phase 2, and Phase 3 only seems like things are going to continue to head into the right direction. So get your Season of Discovery fanboy hats on, and let's take a look at what's to come for Phase 3 and the end game of Season of Discovery. But just before we jump in, as always, feel free to like and subscribe if you're new here, as it helps me out a bunch. So thanks very much indeed. Now, let's get on with it. Now, first for me, the biggest note is that we will finally be getting dual talent specialization in Season of Discovery, which is often noted to be the main spice that Vanilla WoW is missing a lot of the time. And I think this is a fantastic choice, as when you're wanting to experiment with funky new classes and variances, being stuck in a single talent tree can be fairly annoying at times. And from a pragmatic point of view, this will help with general leveling or maybe dungeon running when you need to switch to fill in certain roles of whatever's missing. I mean, look at where all the tanks were in Scarlet Monastery. They were nowhere to be seen. So we'll all be able to pay a visit to the dwarf of many talents, who will be able to help us with dual talent specialization for a small fee, of course. Now for some general changes, we'll be seeing that the 100% XP buff is here to stay for levels 1 through to 39 during Phase 3, as well as a nice 50% XP buff for levels 40 to 49, explained as an attempt to reduce fatigue for leveling and increase the speed at which we can complete the level cap, so that it's one more big leisurable move. However, we will be seeing a change to world buffs, which will now be essentially capped to their previous level cap. For example, you can no longer take the Nomeron raid buff into the new raid at level 50, as it will be capped so that you can't get it past level 49. And speaking of raids, it's been confirmed that our first 20-man raid is indeed Sunken Temple. That will be providing us all with some pretty solid and interesting twists on some familiar looking bosses. And for me, from the few samples we got in the presentation, this really does seem to have more of a true raid appeal, if that makes any sense, giving a gesture of big, dangerous looking bosses who will pose a nice challenge. We also got a nice glance at some of the loot for things like a gun axe, which I'm sure will appear to some of you out there, as well as a quick note on the fact that gear tokens will now have multiple drops throughout the raid, specific to certain classes, as well as some upgrades to specific quest rewards to keep them relevant for a little while longer. And the main change to raiding, besides the size of the raids, is that we will now be moving to a weekly lockout in an attempt to restructure raiding to get a proper schedule going that is less confusing for guilds and players to organise. A choice made for social reasons that fits in with the increased player size of the raids up to 20 mans, as they'll naturally be slightly harder to organise, but all should still be well now. Moving on to runes similar to the Phase 2 preview that we got to see 2 new runes for each class, with the notation that there will still be far more to discover. For druids, you'll be getting gore to help reset some feral cooldowns, as well as improved bark skin. Hunters will be seeing the nice addition of both lock and load, alongside focus fire to increase attack speed at the cost of frenzy from your pet. Mages getting deep freeze and balefire bolt, a risk reward tactic that could see you lose all your spirit and perish. Paladins, Palagang where you at, seems like we'll be getting improved sanctuary and wrath, allowing consecration to crit, as well as spells like exorcism gaining crit chance. Priests will be getting pain and suffering, and surge of light to help dish out some instant casts. Rogues see honor among thieves to build up combo points when other players in your party crit the target, which should see some good bonus damage, and cut to the chase, helping keep slice and dice active. Shamans get mental dexterity, and the return of fan favourite Riptide for the return of some OP shaman healing. Warlocks get pandemic, as well as the classic summon Felguard, with it also being hinted that there will be more demons available to summon throughout Phase 3, but that's still yet to be discovered. And last but not least, Warriors got a look at 3 runes, including Taste for Blood, Sword and Board, and much sought after Gladiator stance, to really ramp things up for Warriors in Phase 3. Moving on to PvP, we got some big news that we'll be seeing level 50 PvP sets, which I thought was a pretty solid move, as it did feel like there was something missing for PvP gear in Season of Discovery. And it seems that Blood Moon will be remaining as our pretty big player PvP world event, with updates to gear, as well as some changes to commendations, but ultimately keeping it what will seem to be the main thing for PvPers out there. Alongside this, we're getting a new World PvE event that revolves around nightmare incursions, where portals will be available throughout without Azeroth, but willing folks to happily jump in, where you'll be met with a host of challenging mobs, from bosses that you can solo to ones that you might need to group up for. This will be available for levels 25 throughout 50, and helps you build up some new rep with a new faction for the Emerald Wardens, to get a whole host of gear that spans various levels. This to me sounds like an excellent addition, as it's a different way for us both to level and gain some gear that doesn't solely revolve around classic dungeon or questing experiences, which despite being something I love, does get a tad stale at times. So these nightmare incursions are to be one of the factors I'm looking forward most to in Phase 3. We also see some nice updates for professions, being able to get professions up to level 300 skill, as well as some new questlines to take us through the raids for nightmare recipes. And to top it all off, some adjustments to costs for leveling professions and gear progression, so that it isn't costing your alts too much gold overall, but there is still a gold sync required. And finally, we got a peek behind the curtain at what's to come for level 60, and whilst we didn't get any hardcore details of what raids we'll be doing, or any massive changes, we did see that there'll be a big focus on itemization, aiming to revamp tier sets and keep other pre-biz items relevant for far longer in the games to keep that classic approach and feel. There'll also be the cool addition of managing weapon skills, so that every race will be able to set their passive weapon skill to whatever they like, so classes like humans won't feel pressured into just using maces, for example. However, this won't stack, so keep that in mind. And finally, it seems we'll be sticking to weekly lockouts for raiding at level 62, in an attempt to keep things more ordered when we finally have multiple raids available to us at max level. So there we have it, a whistle-stop tour of all the big changes to come in Phase 3, as well as some of the sneak peeks at Phase 4. And to be honest, I'm excited for this new phase, as it seems like the Classic WoW team are continuing to make great choices the longer we go on throughout Season of Discovery, and I'm here for it indeed. But do let me know what you thought. Do you like these changes, or are you just not that excited for Phase 3 anymore? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. But as always, if you're new here, feel free to like and subscribe. And on that note, I think I'll say ta-ra for now, and I'll see you later.